Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Today, we will discuss about a book review, Knowledge Triumphant by Franz Rosenthal, under subject Bibliography and Sources of Islamic Studies. My name is Afiqah Najwa binti Muhammad SHAHARUDIN, metric number 1181712. Firstly, introduction. Okay, this book is divided into 8 chapters dealing with many aspects of the idea of knowledge in the Islamic world. It begins by examining the concept of knowledge in Arabic period to the advent of Islam. It also examines the antithesis of knowledge, namely ignorance, which is jahiliyah, and comparing it with wisdom. This book highlights the role of this central text in creating a culture of learning and high regard for knowledge and what it may have meant to various people, scholars, and sects by mentioning the various chapters in book on knowledge from hadith book to fiqh and aqidah. Rosenthal then delves deeper into knowledge and its relationship to faith. He followed this by a discussion of what is understood as God knowledge and human knowledge of God. Lastly, he considers Shia notion of knowledge according to Sufis, another two philosophers' concept of knowledge. His conclusion is a reflection on the concept of knowledge as has been discussed in the book.
Assalamualaikum. My name is MADIHAH SAWDAH binti Muhammad JAFFAR. And my metric number is 1181714. Next is his biodata. First, we start with the background. Franz Rosenthal, born in Berlin, Germany, into a Jewish family on 31st, 1914. He is the second son of Kurt W. Rosenthal, a flour merchant, and Elsa Rosenthal. For his education, he studied classics and Oriental languages and civilizations at the University of Berlin, and he received his doctorate or PhD in 1935 with a dissertation on Palmyrenian inscription, followed by his classic history of Aramaic studies. For his job, after he teaching for a year in Florence, Italy, he became an instructor at the ALIAH, or in English, educational institution, formerly known as Hochschule, or in English, university, für die Wissenschaft des Judentums. In English is for the science of Judaism, a rabbinical seminary in Berlin. In 1940, he taught first at the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, then at the University of Pennsylvania. Next, in 1956, he moved to Yale University, where he taught as Sterling Professor of Arabic and Semitic Studies until his retirement in 1985. For his award, he received the Lisbarsky Medal for his classic history of Aramaic studies in Berlin. He received it in Berlin.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is SYAHIDAH MADIHAH binti Muhammad MUAZZIN, and my metric numbers 1181710. So we move to the new part, which is how the author organized the chapters. Basically, there are 3 main points that I want to share. First is Rosenthal organized the chapters by setting out his overall perspective on the concept of knowledge in medieval Islam. Secondly, the book is divided into 8 chapters with an introduction and a concluding remark at the back. He also divides the chapters into sections and makes it easier for the audience to read. He also starts with the word knowledge or ilm and works through observation of early Islam and Arabic poetry before turning to the next chapters on definition of knowledge, knowledge in theology, knowledge in Sufism, knowledge in philosophy, knowledge in education, and finally concluding remarks. So, what are the important ideas of each chapter? The first chapter is the knowledge before knowledge, and Rosenthal, as the author, analyzed the philological data to inform the term ilm was formed by Arabic among the Semitic language and the meaning of knowledge, although the root contrasts to Arabic. And there is also a close connection between West mind and knowledge that takes special significance in the Arabic environment. And in the pre-Islamic poetry, knowledge appears as something gradated which has to be acquired, which possesses inherent value, and which has its circumscribed limit. So the chapter 2, which is the relevation of knowledge, and the author approached a word count of the root, aim, or knowledge, and finding that it was the principle that the Prophet need to observe, and every single root occurrence is part of a scheme to condition receptive minds as an essential force in the new religion. And in the view of Prophet Muhammad, knowledge consists of two main components, which are human knowledge that divided into secular and religious knowledge, and the second components are divine knowledge that are identical and in a higher order to human knowledge. He also addressed the concept of Islam, beginning with Al-Quran and Hadith that contrasted it with the antithesis of knowledge, namely ignorance or jahiliyah, and compared it with wisdom or hikmah. So, in the chapter 3, which is the plural of knowledge, Rosenthal states that ulum is the accepted plural of ilm that does not occur in the Quran or the old tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, and as a result of the general trend to accept knowledge as one with Islam, and all ulum appear to become one particular ilm that reflecting both the entirety of knowledge and its systemization. It is often difficult to be sure in Muslim literature whether the use of the term ilm is intended for both secular and religious knowledge or only for the latter form. And he also concludes that this difference rarely significant in the Muslim mind like his own way of thought, and this is a characteristic feature of Muslim concept of ilm in general. So we move to the chapter 4, which basically talk about definition of knowledge. Rosenthal mentions that Muslim theologians consider classification as necessary to essential elements as shown by the discussion of Judge Abdul Al-Jaffar in the 12 sections of his book dealing with epistemology. He also mentions that Aristotle's dilemma in his philosophy seems to have been considered an accepted statement that the object known or ma'lum is before knowledge, as Muslim scholars were acutely aware of it. And there are more than 100 definitions of knowledge offered by theologians have been listed and categorized into 12 sections as a guide to the introduction of the discourse found in the remaining chapters of the book. And some of the definitions of knowledge are: knowledge is relative term, knowledge is a motion, knowledge is a form or surah. Okay, that's all from me, so move to the next presenter.
My name is Siti Nurul binti Ahmad TAMRIN ZAKRY, and metric number 1181709. So we continue to chapter 5, which is knowledge Islam, theology and religious science. Alright, so Rosenthal lists out the book and chapters on knowledge according to authoritative tradition groups. There are clear statements on the distinctiveness of knowledge and faith that rarely found, and the majority of Muslims tends to Al-Quran and the history of the term ilm to see faith as feature of knowledge. Next, he continued this with a discussion of what is known as the knowledge of God and human knowledge of God. The knowledge of God was usually thought of as being distinct from the knowledge of humans. With the presence of Imam Shah's nation of the highest kind of knowledge will continually exist of earth because of the dissemination of knowledge among worthy humans. The physicians have acquired their knowledge ulum by following taqlid, the ancient philosophers. He concludes that the destiny of mankind is made as a struggle to seek knowledge through various disciplines.
My name is NURUL, 118.707. Then we proceed to chapter 6, Knowledge is like Sufi. Rosenthal states that the concept to the interpretation of the light verse of the Quran was general agreement that light had to be interpreted metaphorically according to one of several possibilities. The knowledge was not always granted the highest rank in the Sufi canon of mystical qualities. Throughout its great history, Sufism has contemplated itself and in its systematic knowledge in the first place, and in the second place, gnosis and illumination. According to Sufi, ilm was the noblest of all knowledge. The Quran and the Prophet Muhammad are the light of Sufism's knowledge.
Chapter 7, Knowledge is Thought. Rosenthal explained that the philosophical perspective on the concept of knowledge is expressed predominantly in the works of scholars who are linked to the study of logic. He analyzed the Greek works and the choice of the terminology used, which were translated into Arabic. Epistemology was accepted as the essential foundation of theology by 8th century Oriental Christianity within the Muslim Empire. Still, the best evidence available is John of Damascus' famous Visionologist, Fountain of Knowledge. He realized that the meaning of knowledge was necessary to explain the true nature of religion and faith. There was some of effort to translate Al-Amidi discussion of the true nature and knowledge concept that represent the whole effort of Muslim theology from epistemological premise. The jurisprudence of Muslim began as knowledge, which is ilm. The word used for jurisprudence, fiqh, was one of the general term in Arabic and assumed its limited technical meaning only in Islam by identification jurisprudence with knowledge.
For the last chapter is Knowledge is Society, Education. Rosenthal analyzed the role of knowledge in Muslim society and the entire culture of learning, including ilm, amal, and adab. A major theme in the adab literature between the 9th and 11th centuries was the importance of ilm, knowledge, and its relation to the action. In the literature of adab, ilm is almost entirely ignored, and it must be acknowledged that knowledge has no life of its own. The material for an appraisal of knowledge discusses the attitude toward doubt. Limitation on individual knowledge includes personal feeling of scholar and the concept of knowledge as life and as food for the soul, and also knowledge in its relation to money and power that used to evaluate societal force.
What are the reasons behind organizational classification of the book? Okay, so the author has started his study by introducing his subject, which is this concept is for Islamic civilization, knowledge and knowledge trump as Rosenthal responds to Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah, which aims to describe and analyze actually Islamic history. The second to explain to the reader that no other concept operates as the determinants of Muslim civilization in all its aspects the same as ilm. For ilm is one of the concepts that have dominated Islam and given Muslim civilization to its own form and complexity. And the third, there are theologians who are hesitant to accept the truth about and is Islam. Therefore, the author has provided facts in the discussion on this concept to prove that fundamental importance of knowledge for Islam. Next, so how the author used primary sources and other evidence to write the book. So the primary sources is manuscript and printed text. The first, the author, as we know, the author is a consummate philologist in a number of languages and especially in Arabic and Aramaic. He wrote the two classic textbooks in use to this very day as an assistant in the study of history and culture in this writing. For example, a grammar biblical Aramaic 1961 and an Aramaic handbook 1967. And the second, the author used the method of philologists in learning and writing about aspects of intellectual, social, and political history of Islam. Some of the articles collected in the first Varium collection, which is Muslim Intellectual and Social History by Eldershoot 1990. And the third, the author collects and classifies more than 100 definitions of knowledge from Islamic literature under the headings Knowledge is Islam, Knowledge is Life, Knowledge is Thought, and Knowledge is Society. And the last, the author has translated the work from Ibn Khaldun's introduction, which Muqaddimah is to fully understand the knowledge of all aspects of Islamic civilization that Ibn Khaldun has.
Okay, next we proceed to author methodology. This study is a valuable contribution to understanding the meaning of knowledge in Arabic before the advent of Islam, after the advent of Islam, starting with the Quran and Hadith. Contrasting it with the antithesis of knowledge, namely ignorance, jahiliyah, and comparing it with wisdom, hikmah, and also the concept in other Semitic language and culture as well. He also analyzed the Greek words that were translated into Arabic and the choice of terminology used. He tackled logic followed by epistemology as a tool for theology and jurisprudence. The author renders the word into knowledge rather than science. The author also structured the book by taking each relevant subject in succession: Jahiliyah study with comparative Semitic, Quranic studies, Kalam and other religious science, Sufi, philosophy and Greco-Arabic studies, culminating in social history.
Next is some selection of illustration of topics or books or scholars that mentioned by the author in Knowledge Triumphant by Franz Rosenthal. First is Al-Mustafa by Al-Ghazali. Next is Firdaus Al-Hikmah by Ali bin Rabban At-Tabari. Next is Afiqah Al-Afkar by Al-Amidi. And next is Da'aim Al-Islam by Qadi An-Nu'man. The fifth is Fihris by Ibn An-Nadi. Next is Hikam by Ibn Attallah. And next is Muqaddimah by Ibn Khaldun. Next is A History of Muslim Historiography by Franz Rosenthal. And the last is Mu'tabar by Abu al-Barakat.
Next, we move to praise and critique. Okay, for praise, the best part of this book, Rosenthal renders the word M into knowledge rather than science. He discusses M in its widest sense, a sense that encompasses and is not limited to science. With a concept so vast, no one book or study can do justice to the topic. This book merely scratches the surface of this concept that is a defining aspect of the Muslim world. In addition, this book has many chapters that make researchers want to know more about this book in more depth, and each content release is very beneficial for readers who want to know more about the concept of knowledge in the medieval era. For critique, despite the book is very informative, but the structure of the book is not interesting. Besides, the word that being used in this book is quite high because it is hard to understand the meaning of the words.
Next, we proceed to recommendation. We highly recommend this book to all of you because there is a lot discussion in this book about the nation of knowledge in Islam. This book must be seen as a significant contribution to a deeper understanding of some of the important aspects of knowledge and exploration with faith. This book is really good because it is discussed of what is understood as God knowledge and human knowledge of God. Each of the sections explained clearly. Readers with sundry interest will find in the several chapters insightful discussion of their field of specialization documented with a large mass of sources, material awaiting further analysis and study.
So the last is conclusion. Alright. So in conclusion, the author concludes that the concept of knowledge achieved in Islam is its unique triumphs, that the intellectual attitude of Muslim civilization can be taken as a representative of the whole of Islam that is unique when compared to the classical antiquity and Western Christian civilization, both of which together with Islam form three branches of the same tree. Page 337. But also unique when compared to Indian and Chinese civilizations. Therefore, Islam's insistence on knowledge undoubtedly makes Muslim civilization a great scholarly and scientific productivity, and through it, Muslim civilization make the most lasting contribution to all human beings. Alright, that's all from us, and thank you.